Hi everyone. Gonna run a glitch workshop. This is mostly going to my process as opposed to a comprehensive workshop on glitch art. I'll be pointing you to some resources where you can look at that a lot more in depth. What I was hoping to explore is some of the processes that I use, which hopefully will inspire you to approach this kind of stuff in a different way, or even just to shed some light on how I go about doing stuff. That being said, I've got a bit of stuff I want to get through. If you could keep your questions for the first hours, and on the second hour, any questions that you have, I'll be taking questions in, so you can jot them down, put them in a notepad, whatever works for you. But so I can plow through some of the stuff and get through as much as I can. I've got a few links up here. I'll be pointing you to the resources page. What else? I'm going to go through some of these processes, which I'm not going to go into heaps about, say, installing some things, because some things are a little bit tricky, but there is a lot of stuff in here in the resources that will explain that. So first, starting on glitch art, I suppose, with the idea that it's trying to cause an error and a malfunction in a way, and that there may be a few of these along the way, so we'll see how well that goes. I do have a few pre-prepared things, so I'll start by saying, when you do any of this stuff, it's really important that you have a second copy of whatever it is you're working on. So if you're trying to data bend an image or a video, have another copy of that. There's nothing more frustrating than spending tons of time working on something only to overwrite it and it's broken. And files do break, they become unusable. I mean, you try your best not to, by things like first avoiding editing the header, which is generally, if you're doing video, it's the start of the video. And if you're in a hex editor, it'll be the start of the file as well. So it's really important to keep a copy of the file so you can revert back to that. I suppose I just start straight into it. So here I've got a bunch of, you should see the resources up here, and pretty much all of it should be free. I mean, I'm not all made of money. I know I'm not. So I use a lot of free resources, and there's a lot of open source stuff as well. I'd say your basics are these few. So Audacity is a really interesting one, because there's a lot that you can do with it in terms of audio and visual. It has some effects that are fairly native to it. I recommend getting that. There's also through their page, which I'll just flick through now, they have a bunch of legacy plugins, Ladspa plugins here, and through this here, which I'll just make it easy. I can chuck it in. I'm going to paste some links into the chat here as well. I can. Let's see if that works for me. That's to the plugins. If you click on the legacy Windows ones here, it'll open up the Ladspa, and it'll the installer, sorry. Did I paste the right one? Yep. That will take you to a place to download some of the plugins. It's good to have extra options when using Audacity, so I chuck those in there. It just means that you have more options to do more glitches. Hex editor, I'll go to the next one. Hex editor is kind of the rudimentary data bending process. It's a good one to have one on hand. I've got a couple up here, but there's tons. Whatever you're comfortable using. Notepad Plus is a kind of, I've got a pretty good one. Then into processing, which I don't really write scripts for these. There's so many out there. I just generally run things through it, which I do a lot of. I'm not a programmer. I don't really have a lot of understanding of that thing. I know some, but not really. A lot of what I do is manipulating stuff that's already out there, and it's mostly a combined process of a lot of different things on top of each other. I'll go into later. This one's an interesting one. Acid Cam. It processes video and it also processes webcam. I'll jump into that too. GIFCAR, but however they pronounce that. I use that a fair bit because it has some really good effects on it. I'll show that one as well. Just because an open source alternative, Photoshop is a good one. Now, Datamosh Studio is one I really recommend installing. I'm going to show you how I do a Demux, which is kind of the original, I suppose, way of datamoshing. This cuts out a lot of the process. It's a lot easier. It's a lot more intuitive. You can batch process a lot of stuff. It takes out a lot of time. You don't have to bake, which when I refer to something being baked, when you break a file, you need to resave it generally afterwards so that the file's okay. If you don't bake a file when you data bend it, generally it will play back differently on nearly all media players, which is fun, but not often for the viewers because it might work differently on their end. So always bake your files at the end. I generally use FFmpeg, which is something also I really recommend. I put VLC player here. It is a good one because sometimes they can make some really interesting glitches. So and in terms of that kind of stuff, I would also recommend using something like OBS or some kind of screen grab. That's going to be a really important tool too, because some files you'll do, especially video, they won't be able to be saved, or you try a bunch of different things and can't save them, but you can still screen grab them. And then down here, OpenView is a like a picture viewer, but it handles a lot of files really well. So I'd really recommend that. It's that, and Virtual Dub is another video file alongside of this Vitamux. And finally, FFmpeg, which I'd highly recommend putting this one in. Command line tool. It's really powerful for what it does, and there's some basic stuff that I use it for, like I said, baking, but then editing video files and preparing them for different processes. It's really handy. Before going too far into this stuff, I suppose I might just jump straight into some of the processes. So we'll look at the kind of rudimentary one with hex editing. Now, this hopefully will work okay. I've got a hex editor. Sorry for the pop-ups. Windows 10, thank you. It should be popping up. Yeah, I've got a file which I'll quickly play back. I'm editing a video file. There's my hex editor. I'm just using hex edit. Now I'll find this video. So this is the file I'm going to dump in there. Just a quick video loop. I'll just drag and drop that in there. It should be okay. I'll find out in a minute. Okay, so thinking. Okay, this will make it a bit easier. Here we go. I think I have opened it. I'm just gonna, excuse me, technical difficulty. I'm just gonna hit that, start it again. Okay, we're first attempting to glitch an image through hex edit, and my system has glitched already, so we're up to a rolling start. Bear with me. All right, okay, we've got some progress now. Okay, good. And there's our pop-up again. All right. Okay, so hex editor. Yeah, this one essentially, like it will open up the file with a bunch of text, and what I usually do is this simple process, just searching for a bunch of different characters and replace them. I mean, there's a few different things that you could do in this. You could cut sections out and paste in your own. Right, thank you. Okay, here we go. You see it? Thanks, mate. All right, hex editor. So this is like, it'll vary from program to program, but this is essentially what you'll get. You'll get all of these hex codes on the side and hopefully the text in here. This first section here, as I mentioned, the header, I would stay away from it. So I'd scroll down a little bit. You can kind of see a little bit of a break. It will vary from file to file. This is that flame one I just had up before. So what I would do for this specific one is I find a little spot and get ready to start from here. So I'm just doing a shortcut for a search now. Again, this should be very similar in most programs, where you can find characters, and this could be random. You could choose anything that's kind of arbitrary. I'll look for something, just type in 2 characters. And the more characters that you type in here, obviously the least amount it's going to do to replace. If you just put 1 character, it's going to take a long time, and it's going to go through the process and change a lot of the characters, which could end up taking quite some time. I'm just going to go with 2. It seems to work all right for me. As I understand, I don't really understand, sorry, that a lot of the nuts and bolts things. I do know some things, but I find it's not really necessary. So we'll go through now. Replace all. It'll ask me to go through. Okay, so there it's gone through and replaced 109 things. So I'll come up here now and see. I don't want to override it. Okay, I am just saving that now. You can't see that it's off screen, but I'm just saving the file now. Okay, there we go. I will rename that hex. Now let's have a look and see how that turned out. It may have worked. Should see soon enough. Okay, there we go. Okay, so that's the result there as opposed to the original one. You can see the effects is how it's processed video. It will process images slightly differently and also dependent on the files. Like this is another one to be aware of. Each file generally kind of has its own effect. Uncompressed files are harder to break, so sometimes you have to push them a little bit harder. I'm just using an MP4 for this example. In terms of images, I have a lot of like better luck using PNG files. You can use other files, JPEG, etc. The effect will be a little bit differently, a bit different. Yeah, for the purpose of this, I'm not going to go through every single effect, but I will touch on a few of them. So this is kind of the rudimentary glitch effect using a hex editor. As I said, there's a bunch of different hex editors you can use. This is kind of the starting point, I would say, for doing some of this work. Though if I'm honest, I don't really use hex editing a lot. I've found a lot of other ways to do this and do it in kind of a batch process kind of way. Like it's been a while since there's been glitch art, so there's a lot of people that have developed a lot of practices, but that's just for the purpose of showing you one of the basic kind of introduction to glitch art. What we'll touch on next, I think, I'll go straight into some software that I use to get some glitch effects, just as a contrast to show you that a lot of these processes, while there's a long way to do them initially, which some people do prefer, I'm not afraid of using whatever is out there to be able to do something, you know, whether you use an app or whatever. Because I don't generally stop at one process, I'm not afraid to use whatever and just keep working that thing. Yeah. One of these is, this is the GIFCA one, which this is it here. It's a fairly simple bit of software. I'll link for it is just here on the resources thing. I'll just drop a link in the chat for everyone. That I find I use this specifically because I do really like their pixel sorting filter. And this is something too, you will help to make yourself familiar with all the different types of software. You'll find your own aesthetic, and hopefully through doing a few different things that you'll be able to figure out what you prefer working. And as you get familiar with a lot of the processes, that you'll be able to pick and choose between different software and processes and go, oh, I want to do this effect and I like it doing this, and etc. I really like the pixel slotting effect and also a few other processes. So I do use this a bit. I don't just rely on it. As you see, like I'll show you that there's a bunch of other things that I do. You can edit video files, which for the sake of this one, I'm going to dump this video file into there as well. Let's me. So as it's playing, I might just stop this. It doesn't eat up too much. The side here is all your filters. I'll just start with some, like I won't go through every single one, but just as I was talking about it here, there's a shift one, which is quite interesting. This I like to use in combination with other things. So you're kind of making the certain areas of the image or video file, as you can kind of see them popping up and moving, shift. I like to use this one in combination with a Vitamux or like a Datamoshing process, just to get some movement. And if I play, you'll see it kind of moves stuff around. The reason I like using this one, it's simple and changes, like can make something move that might be static. Say if you're doing an image, it can be really good to turn that into a video file and process it through a Vitamux or Datamosh Studio, which I do often. I like to process images in that way, where I'll turn them into a video file and then just screen capture an image. Because you're working with artifacts, it's not necessary that you always have high resolution. In fact, sometimes it's really good to have a lower resolution. So for the sake of this one, I'm just going to go into the pixel sort one, just is a little bit more an interesting result at the end. Stop this so it slows down. Yeah, I'll find that at the top. Okay, there's standard pixel sort. Now we've got a few different ones here. I'll just, you're going to experiment with the different types. Standard pixel sort, and we'll see what the angle, I think. So we're working in, I generally go 90, 180, etc. That just straight 90-degree angles, but depending on the image, you might want a pixel sort on an angle. It's a lot easier to see this in an image, but for the sake of this one, I'm just going to keep using the same file. So I'll try 180 and see where this takes me, because the angle is also dependent on the type of sort. This is one of the reasons why I really like this one, is the gradient pixel sort. It's got a really nice aesthetic, and when you combine, this is something that I've done in the past too. Those who are familiar with an app called Glitch Lab, they do have their own pixel sorting effect on there too. I tend to bounce it out of that, but I have used it before. They've got a nice kind of 3D effect, which processing and a few other ones have something similar, but there's just something really nice about that. I'll bounce the image out and then bring it into here and could bounce it back and forward. It's laborious, but a lot of all of this stuff it can be quite time consuming. You can eat up your hard drive by all the different iterations that you'll be saving. So for this one, I might just start with that there. This slider here will give you the quality. I'm just going to leave that there just so that we can save one. And I'll save this. We already started. Yeah, I'll save that one, and we can see the process on that. Give me a sec. I'll just have to minimize this one for one moment. Okay, so I'll save that one so we can see an end result. If I can find where it's saving, hang on, bear with me. There's a couple of these moments. Okay. Just off screen now, but I'm just saving it into into the folder that I'm using. Okay. Okay, I'll just show you the pop-up. You get a pop-up here. You can do a series of images or an animated GIF. I'm choosing video again here. And this is the second version of GIFka. There's the first version with not as many options. Either are good. This one just gives you a few more options. So okay, flame sort will do. Now that may take a few moments to render. Oh, thank you, AVG. Okay, I'll get back to the video screen here. You also find with doing these two on the image that you make any kind of slight tweak to something that even if it's to shift the quality around, that it will change this. So if you're editing minor things as you're going with this, like if you go and change something like that back and forth, you might lose the actual one that you're working on. So it's good to save it as you go. Okay, now I should be able to show you guys the result of that one. Just one moment. Sort. Okay, I think it's still saving. Bust the process. Okay, FFmpeg. I seem to have lost the process somewhere. So there you go, glitch number 2. Let's try that again. Okay. We're going to try and save this again because it didn't save the first time. Okay. Go straight to the desktop. Okay. For some reason, I can't get it to save. Not to worry. You can see the process. I can't show you the result, but you can see the process of this one. I won't hang too much longer on this, so we can get through some more things. That will give you an example as it's playing through. Obviously, it won't be so jittery. That is GIFka. It's a little handy tool to use. I'll just close that one down. Now I'll bring up Audacity as another really good one that I like to use. Audacity. Windows. Thank you. Okay. And this is it's mostly meant to be an audio editor, but there's a lot of interesting stuff that you can do with this. I might try import an image just quickly onto this one. Actually, it'd be a lot easier to show you guys. I've got this image here. Let's just start with that one. It's already glitched out, but it's fairly basic. Gonna chuck that one in there. Now, when you're using this one, you're importing files as a raw file. So you jump down here, and I'm gonna show you two just quickly. These are all the extra effects that I was talking about. This is standard ones. There's just a few. Whereas you get a lot of other ones, you can import other VSTs into here as well. Not everything works, but it's really good to have a lot of extra ones. Everything kind of has its own aesthetic. So you start from here and import it as raw data. I'll grab this file. Let's see where that file is going. There we go. Now you'll be greeted with this little pop-up box, which for audio is kind of interesting. You can bring it in, pardon me, as audio and use that in your own music. If you're making stuff, it can be quite harsh. I'd recommend, if you're going to use audio from anything like this, to definitely put a limiter on, because it can be quite loud sometimes. For this, we're going to select, there's one I always forget. I think it's A-Law. I'm thinking going with A-Law. Just remember what you choose though. I think this always makes a huge difference. U-Law or A-Law. Just remember what you choose. I mean, feel free to experiment with any of these types of ones. You can get some interesting results. For the purpose of this, we're just going to choose that. I'm not going to worry too much about this. I won't go much into that. It's not really that necessary. So as you see, it'll come up with an audio file here. Now, probably because I'm not using a bitmap, which is probably the best to use, the header won't be as obvious, and I might not have the best result with this image, but we'll see how we go. Normally it will be somewhere around the start here, the first couple of seconds or something like that will be the header file. Definitely stay away from that. We're just going to try an effect and see if that does anything to this one. So what you do is, once you've imported it, then you come down to an effect, choose something, and apply that, and then export it essentially. So I'm just going to choose a reverb. There we go. Applied the reverb, and then I would export it as audio. Now let's see, it's raw. So I should have remembered which one. Yeah, it's U-Law. I will just rename that to test here so that I know which one it is. Save that one, and then what I'd go to do from there. I'm not getting the file show up. Bear with me for a minute. There's been a few of these. Yes, I have the audacity. Let's get rid of that. I've broken Audacity as well. I'm doing well. Okay. That's why I didn't see this pop up out of the screen. That'll pop up, and just hit OK with that. Okay, it's popped up on my desktop. You can't see here, but on the it will save as .raw, the extension. I would change from here. Just make sure that you can view extensions because you want to edit them. change that back to whatever the file name was. So it was .raw. I've just changed that back to .png, I think it was. And that was my result. As you can see, nothing's really guaranteed. We've got one tiny line up here. Doesn't always work. Perhaps I could try the video file if it's an MP4. I could try a bitmap. No. Okay, here we go. Look, show you is that one of the effects? Oh, this is multi-layered. I was going to try and show you an example. It does have a specific look to it, Audacity. Either way, that is essentially the process you would do for an image. The way that you can do video is similar. You can also combine video. You can combine video as well. Sometimes this works too. I'm going to try and see if we can get one of the videos to go in there as well. Okay, there's my images. I'm try and import the video as well. Okay, will ask me to do the same thing again. I'm going to try A-Law, onions. Okay, well, it looks like we might be able to see a bit of a header here. There we go. This section here will be a header, so you're kind of trying to avoid using that. Now, one technique, I did this one where I edited this section here, which I'll do in a sec, but what you can also do is combine two videos together. Sometimes this works, sometimes it doesn't. Okay, let's try. I'm going to try an example that I did before to just show you, and hopefully that works as well. Okay, there we go. So we got two files here. I'll zoom right in. We'll see if we can see a header from both of these. Yeah, there's a header there. So when you're doing two files, you want to remove the header from one of them because we're going to combine the two of them, and you don't want to have two headers. It won't work. So what I would do then is I just drop the volume right down. I think I can add silence. This should work anyway. From memory, it's been a while since I've done this one. Okay, so I've taken the added some silence into the start. Remove that section anyway. I mean, I probably just delete the whole thing. It'd probably be even easier. Nope. Let's go with that. And what I would do then is select them all and then go mix and render. Now, oh, hang on a sec. Oh, pardon me. What I probably should mention too is there's a whole section, because this file is a different length, that nothing will happen to it. So it would just come out as original. I'll just delete that. I'll try that again. Now, mix those two together. And let's see. I'll export that one the same way. Either. Okay. Now, let's see if that came out. Saving these off screen. See, it will be the file name and then .raw. And essentially I'm just changing it back to the initial file extension, which I think in this case was MP4. Okay, that one completely broke. So that one's not going to show up. It's going to be, sometimes it's going to happen. That is the process. As you see, there's going to be a bunch of these happen. That's the process for combining them. Essentially, the process for making these files, like I did with the image file, is the same. If you import everything the same as we did before and put an effect on it, which I might even just try quickly and see if it does something to it. I think let's do an echo. I'll see if that works. It's probably, it could potentially also be that it's better to use uncompressed files, and I'm using an MP4. It may also have something to do with it. Ooh. Yeah, that could essentially be one of the reasons why it's not coming up with the result. As I said before, a lot of this is trial and error. So let's see if we've got one. What I will also mention too is that when you're doing this kind of stuff, especially if you're doing a video file, you may need to bake it, which I would, again, I would use FFmpeg. If you're having problems, there is a playback, like you can't save it, then I would try a screen grabber and see if that works. I'm just trying a few different video players to see if this actually works, because surprise, it's not playing back either. It probably would help if I did an AVI, but I've crashed another program. Well, look, all the glitches are successful in the way that nothing's working, so I suppose that's some kind of win. That is essentially Audacity without an example. I mean, I can quickly show you some examples of using Audacity, or you could search them yourself. Maybe I'll leave that up to you guys. It does have some really cool effects that you can do with it. I would recommend not using the files that I did, and using bitmaps and APIs. You probably have better results than the ones that I just used. So without lingering on too more, I might just move on to another one. I'll just quickly jump into this one because it can be kind of handy. This is this little bit of software called Acid Cam, which I do use sometimes for different effects. I should be able to do some live ones here, actually. I'll give that a shot. This is the software here. You can capture from a video, load a video in, and there's a bunch of different effects that you can run through here. When you do capture, it will ask you to record it, which you want to do. Otherwise, you'd just be showing an example. You can kind of coordinate a bunch of effects on the side here, but I just generally scroll through as it's playing back. It's up to you how you want to work this. I'm going to try and do the webcam one. Now it'll give you this little pop-up. You can choose, let's go I'll keep it simple. And it'll ask for a saved directory. I'm just going to use this, but I'm not going to save it. You choose where you want to do it. Okay, now let's see if this works. I'm not sure how it's going. I think I have lost that. Okay, that's not showing up on my end. Glitch number 3. Winning today. Yeah, let's try something else. Opening it back up. I just ended it. Hopefully we get a win so far. Okay, back again. I'll just try the capture from a video. For the purpose of trying to give you guys an example of something that works. Okay, here we go. It's going to tell me where to put thing. I'll put that in the same folder there. I'll do desktop. I want to save this one anyway. Okay. Okay, now we've gotten some results. That was very quick. So okay. Not getting it, not quick enough to get it back onto the screen. Okay. I'm going to try and get this going with a longer video. It's not letting me do this one. Okay. Got a longer video file here. Hopefully that'll let me do this quicker. It's just a screen grab. Some process, I think. Okay. All right. Got another example because I'm trying to capture a video, but it's a little bit short. Not quick enough to drag it across for you guys to see it. So let's go with, okay, here we go. I'm going to just put this one in from my workshop. That will start. Okay. Okay, here's an example here. I should be able to edit it as I go. As you see. All right, finally a win. It's got a bunch of filters and effects here. Can be kind of cool if you want to do something live. Like I have used this live before because it can capture from a webcam. So you can throw this up through a projector or something like that. And there's a bunch of different effects. You've got a, different things you can play with here, saturation, gamma, and, that can affect each individual effect. And there's a ton. Like this guy's really put together something really cool for free, like stray warning. Yeah, this one's really fun to play with. As I did before, when you capture it, you can choose to record it. So you can record it, you can choose your resolution. This is a one that I use sometimes too, just for some interesting textures, etc. Not really much else to say, but it is pretty straightforward. Yeah, I recommend having a play around with this one because it's kind of fun. There's color maps here. You can just change basic kind of can't really see them that much, but there's another something else that you can play with. Here, I'll stop that there. And oh, there we go, full screen. Okay, we'll go back to where we were before to keep going through some stuff. We're coming up, plowing through the time. We'll just quickly dive into FFmpeg, which I was hoping to have some more time with that. Oh no, actually, I want to do Datamosh Studio first quickly. If I can do that, I might just plow through these if I can. I have here a Vitamux, which is the long way of Datamoshing, which like I would be importing a file into here, and say for Datamoshing, you would import a file and remove the iframes, or there's this specific effect called the bloom effect, which you can see on these resources here, the links to it. Let me check that one out. It'll go into some examples for you, and that's basically copying and pasting p-frames. For the sake of this one, though, I'm just going to quickly do a bloom effect just to show you an example. So if I import a file into here, should be this flame one. It'll ask you to do these each time. It's just say no whenever I ask you a question. No, 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 no. Make it so that you can see. For this, it helps you choose decoder options and then to show the motion vectors, because as you scroll through, which I'm just using the arrow key to the right, you'll see the arrows popping up for the motion of where the next frame's going. Now, you want to choose a P frame. There's a lot of B frames here, which you can remove, insert extra iframes, etc. through FFmpeg. I won't go into that now, which can help with some of the results. But just for this one, I'm selecting just the P frame, which if I would do that, actually would do that manually. I'm using the keys, shortcuts to do that. But essentially, I'm going and selecting, that's not, okay. Selecting an area here. Maybe I'll do that by hand and make it easier. So selecting the start point and then shifting across to the arrow, then that, and then copying it, Control C on Windows. That's where what I'm using. And then pasting it multiple times. Sometimes if you paste it too many times, it'll crash. And then I'll save this. Now I'm going to save this, and I'm not going to bake it, but essentially a lot of people tell you to prep this first. There's videos on that. I won't go into it too. I'm a bit time constrained, but I often don't do that with this just because I can bake it with FFmpeg. It's really quite simple and quick. I'm just going to save this one. Oh, and you have to add your extension in a Vitamux too for it to work. So that was saved successfully. Let's see if it was successful. Okay. All right, this one worked. So as you see, as it comes back around, that's the bloom effect. You kind of repeat the P frames over and over. Depending on the source image, it'll come out a better example. I do have another one here that I did, but you can experiment with different ways of reproducing those. Where I've had ones work really well where I've picked a P frame and repeated it just a couple of times, 2 or 3 times, and move on to the next P frame, repeated that, and then kept going through it. Laborious, but there's a really nice effect. Sometimes the bloom effect will be slow or lag or hold on a frame for a bit longer. I often chuck that into a video editor and speed it up so that you don't notice or manually cut frames out. Now, if I was to Datamosh this, I would be looking for the iframes, which there's one there, and selecting them, and then hitting delete and deleting the iframes. And when I get to the end here, I would be choosing another file and going append, and then opening that file to put it on the end. I'll ask those same things again, and then repeat the process, remove the iframes. That can take a long time when you're doing bigger files. I mean, I generally try and just edit clips. What I prefer to use, because it's a lot quicker, is Datamosh Studio, which that one should be in your on the resources page here that I mentioned earlier. Yeah, definitely recommend getting this one. It'll ask you the options here, where to create a new one. I'm just create a folder in here and make a folder. Mosh. It'll ask me, it'll ask you what bit rate and width, etc. Because I'm using these ones, I think I'm probably 24. I'm not going to check. I'm just going to leave that there. You can change those rates as you want. It will go through, set yourself up. Yeah, it's really kind of simple to set up to get going. I'll go into now where I'm importing the files. Oh, don't move that. All that. What am I doing? Okay. I'll start with this one. Now, just importing the file now, it's fairly quick. Select the file that you want to do and delete the iframes. Now here you can choose whatever section that you want of the frame, and just go right to the end and import the whole file. And you do this for multiple files so you can mosh them together. It can be really handy, and it's pretty light on the resources. What you want to do is, depending on how many files you import, you'll have your file name here. Choose that because that's the starting frame and that'll affect the mosh. I'm just going to insert the same thing twice. And you can move things around, cut them, so you move left or right if you want to reorder things, etc. I'm just going to export this one. Now it will export to the folder that you saved all of this in, which in my case here, I've just made this folder here. This is essentially what it'll look like. You'll have the AVI and the MP4. MP4 is the one that you want to look at. What I generally do is I copy this file if I like it to somewhere else and rename it, and just keep this here. It'll keep generating every time you export. So this will give you an example. And it didn't really mosh, probably because of the file itself isn't very interesting. Perhaps I can do a better example just quickly. Let's remove that one. See if I can get something a little bit more interesting for you guys, just as an example. Okay, this one here is a file that I edited earlier. I'm going to swap that one around. Hopefully that gives a better example, and just quickly render that one. Okay, there are some artifacts. Obviously, my files here start with a black screen. So if they started with an image first, it would be your kind of stereotypical Datamosh effect where it looks like something's popping through another image. That is essentially how you use Datamosh Studio. I use this one a lot. I use it when I want to do images as well, and just screen grab stuff. Yeah, it can be really handy. Oh, someone asking about, you're asking about the Vaeprism marks. Yeah, it can be hard to get results often for the labor that you do, like I did before with just the bloom effect. That's what I generally use it for, and then bake it in FFmpeg. I try and repeat a small section and then save it, and continually save and save and save different variations, because it can crash quite easily. And also sometimes the results are a bit poor. I tend to use this more often for actual Datamoshing. That is, like, there's not really much else to this. That's Datamosh Studio. If we got some time, if you're all good, I'd like to go through quickly FFmpeg, because it's kind of the final one. I was going to touch on processing, which I could just quickly, maybe I'll just quickly show you guys. Processing is, I'm not doing anything really amazing in terms of what processing does. I don't write scripts. I just generally use them. If you go onto GitHub or somewhere like that and you just search glitch art, you'll find a ton of different ones, or in the resources one here, a ton of different scripts. There's this group, Glitch Art Collective, which, like, really recommend looking into this. They can be really good too to get more help from certain things. They might share some stuff to you. I know that there's a few in there. Can also help you with some of the stuff, but I essentially just use other people's scripts because I'm not really that familiar with much programming. And just edit the results from there. Now, what probably helps us, I suppose, let me think, where have I got the files? Okay. Yeah, I've got a ton of different ones here. Let me see if I can get one of these going for you guys, just quickly. I'll try this. I'm not sure if that one will work. There's essentially a pop-up, something like this, and sometimes you'll have to edit it, but the file itself will generally have a description, and you just hit play once you've edited everything. Now, this one, well, it's not going to pick it up, I suppose, because it's running live. This is a webcam one. It does slit scan. I think it's not going to work live. Yeah, there's not really much I can say about this, except that I do use it for a few different processes. In terms of what it does, it's really varied. Like, it can really depend on what scripts you've got. Let me see if I can open this for you quickly. Just to give you an example of what this is doing. Just one moment. So I know we're getting a little bit into question time. If everyone's cool, I just quickly get through these ones, and then I'm happy to go through some stuff. That one. Okay, this one is a kind of cool effect called Generate Me, which there we go. That's what I was looking for earlier. That's an example of an Audacity image. Just like it's got a bit of reverb or something put onto it. It has the kind of look that kind of goes along with that. Anyway, moving right along. If we take an image, I'll give you an example. I think it's this one. Okay, so I've got this image here. I'm running it through this script, which will give this effect. Very cool. No idea how it works. I didn't write the thing, but it's something that I use, and I can use that in combination with other effects. That is kind of how I use processing. I don't use it a lot. I do sometimes for certain images and certain effects. But say that one just there, I might take something like that and then I'll run it through GIFCar. And this is also like part of my process is I generally don't just leave something as is one process. I really encourage you guys to experiment with all the different types of processes that you do and find different ways that will work for you. I mean, there's certain aesthetics that will work really well, like I talked about the Glitch Lab one, or you find anything that will make something a little bit three-dimensional like that one does, and then apply previously applying pixel sorting to it, you can create a really cool effect. And there's a ton of different variations on that idea. Same as a lot of these processes, I encourage experimenting. I mean, it's all the name of the game, isn't it? Really, you can get a lot of cool results from that by pushing things and keep trying things further and further. I'll just jump quickly into FFmpeg. Now, this is a command line tool. Let me see. Let's start that up unless I've already got it open. Yeah, and it's like it's small in the process, but it's super powerful. There's so much that you can do. I could do a whole thing just talking about. I use it for a lot of things. I've used it on a lot of stuff recently. Okay, so command line stuff, like if I can shortly, I'm working on a little cheat sheet. I encourage you to these as well. There's a lot of codes online, but I've made a little cheat sheet where I can edit things to copy and paste them in. So you can see here, like here's a code for baking something into MP4. I'll run through a quick one here. You're essentially taking a file here, and this is an effect called FFglitch, which something that I've just recently started to get into. Very cool effects. It's if any of you guys have seen my video for the exhibition is predominantly done with that effect. This is, as I don't have that on the resources page, I'm just going to quickly pop that in for the links. Definitely recommend this one too. There's some really cool effects. There is a little bit of a thing with installing it, but essentially, like, you'll get this is a Windows one minus these, because I did these myself, and the commands also. You'll get these files here. Now you want to come back in and dump them into here, and you also need to, I think you need to install another thing. I think it might be, I think there is another file that you need to install for it to work, I think, from memory. Oh, it's on their page. That's what it is. There's two kind of effects with this one, and the main ones, if we can find quickly how, these are the two types here, and it'll run you through on the website here. That's the code on how to set them up. But essentially, you're making a JS file from a text file. It'll go through this. I won't touch on that now, but it'll go through this on the website. I just want to show you quickly an example of using FFmpeg. So through my little cheat sheet, which is really handy as if you get into this stuff that you start doing the same thing too. I'd have these set as like input and output so I can tell what I'm looking for in a little title. I've already got this one set up. So essentially I'd just copy this and then come back into here and paste it in and then hit enter, bang, it does it. It's a short file. Obviously a longer file will take longer. In this process, the next one, that was just to prepare the file as an MPG. It glitches in the next process. And here I've got a baking it. So with FFmpeg and how I said I bake often, this is essentially it. This is the I here, this is your input, and that's your file, whatever your file extension is. I'm telling it to do the H.264 here, libx codec for MP4. You could just copy the codec if you want, but this is just how I standardly turn something into MP4, telling it to copy the audio, although there's no audio with this one, and then the file name. This isn't necessary, but I have it on there anyway. It's necessary to know. So that's how I'd bake any file really. This one that I just did then, so I've gone through all of those things and done one. Here's the example of the flame one that I was showing you recently with that process. Just some really cool aesthetics. Lots of fun to use. There's also that's the let me think, that is the AMV, which I think from their process, average motion vector. The simple motion vector effect kind of drags things vertically in a really interesting way too. That probably has more use when you have things that have an up or down motion. It can look really cool, leave a really interesting trail. I generally have just been using the other one, the average motion vector. All of these are like I encourage you to get onto the GLITCH.COOL Discord. I am prepping this so it can make a little bit more sense for you guys to use. I've got a ton of different effects. I'll touch on just quickly with using this, using FFmpeg. Another one of the things that you'll start seeing finding useful with GLITCH.COOL techniques is, in terms of video especially, is different types of codecs. Now this one, Webm, is really, it makes a really interesting effect. I've got a code here, which you can see. It's essentially when you do glitch out with this stuff, it can put them into columns. This is essentially removing those columns before you glitch it. So I'd run that through the console through FFmpeg, and then choose a hex editor or something similar. And as per the process that I did before, find certain characters and replace them. Then I would come back to something like this. Yeah, I'd probably use this and put the file name that I named and Webm there, and then the file here, changing it back to MP4 to bake it and to kind of seal in the effects that I did. I've got an example here because it has a pretty specific kind of look to it when you edit those files. And you'll find the more you experiment with certain types of codecs, that they'll give you certain results, have certain aesthetics. And let me see, I think it was this one, not that one. Okay, yeah, it has this kind of like effect to it. I'll try and explain it, but that's generally how it will look. It's kind of interesting. I'm going to kind of round it up there because like there was a ton more I want to go into, but what I will also say with these things that I was talking about, combinations of different effects, etc., processes, sorry, and going through those processes to just continually create more varied results and texture, etc. I do chuck a lot of this stuff into a video editor. I keep all of the things that I do, every result, even if it, it doesn't work out so well, that I can draw from them later, or when I'm editing something in video editor that I might not like something I remember that I did, etc. I can draw back on that one. What I like to do is there's certain editors, depending on what you're using, they should have blend options. So if you've got two videos, you can blend them similar to Photoshop filters, where you can blend them by adding them color, hue, saturation, dodging and burning, etc. You can get some really interesting results by just using those. Sometimes dependent on what video that you're doing, it can help to just combine an effect with the individual original video. Say if I'm doing something where, like, I like to use a lot of narrative in my work, and I might find that an aesthetic, whilst it looks cool, you can't really see what's going on, and it's detracting from what story I'm trying to tell, which is something that I think is really important, and something a little overlooked with just thinking about aesthetic is I think, in terms of art, and it applies to all forms of art, that some kind of story or a narrative really it gives us something else. I think it's a big part of my process. That you might find that combining an effect or dropping the opacity of something like that through your video editor to have more effect, or sometimes I'll run a bunch of clips that like might just be plain, but I'll find a transition between the two might be only a couple of seconds. Then I'll just save that section, bounce it out, and then run it through a process, and then stack that on top in my video editor. So a decent video editor can be a friend too. There's a ton out there. I use one called Film Express. It's pretty janky to install. It can be good. There's another one called Shotcut. Yeah, I find that one's really good for high res stuff, because unless you pay for the hit film, it limits you by the resolution. Whatever you're familiar with, if you can find ones that allow you to have blending options, even better. It just will give you more options. Don't think now. I'm happy to take questions if anyone has any more. Like, I can still go through more processes like with this, but if there's any questions you guys have in regards to any of this stuff, I mean, I was going to go through some other examples, like I did this one with another FFmpeg filter. Not time to go through all of this stuff, but if there's any questions you guys have, I'm happy to take them now too. Hope that was helpful in some kind of way, or it shed some kind of light into my process. Cheers.
Yeah, I have a question. So basically, yes. I have no idea about in general about techniques. So as a beginner, like if I want to start, like which program or technique would you recommend? Like it would be the easiest to approach as a beginner.
I suppose like I'd find a lot of these not too hard to get into. Sometimes they can be a little bit tricky to install at the most, but I think what would probably help would be kind of getting an idea of the aesthetic that you really wanted to do. Hex editing is fairly simple. You dragging and dropping a file into a hex editor and then just modifying the text and then saving it back. I would say for instant results, probably something like Datamoshing, because you can use it twofold, and instead of like definitely help to learn how to use a Vitamux, but Datamosh Studio just takes a whole lot of that headache out, and you can process a lot more stuff. To me, it seems fairly intuitive. I'd probably recommend something like that. In terms of usability, like if you can wrap your head around FFmpeg, I'd really recommend that one, because there's just so much that you can do with it. There's that. It maybe because it's command line, it does look a little bit daunting. In terms of beginner, yeah, I would probably say try with the hex editor first, maybe some software like that, or like even pick up some of the apps. There's a ton of apps on phones just to get used to some of the processes, you know, like I talked about Glitch Lab. There's also another one called Glitch. There's a ton of different ones which do a lot of these effects to get you a little bit familiar with some of the processes. Is also another a good starting point. I mean, that probably what I would also suggest is if you have a look on my resources up here, just scroll down, there's a whole bunch of stuff online. There's also heaps of things that you can do online too. I would really recommend for a beginner to go to this one, Glitch It Resources. It's really comprehensive. It touches on everything that I've talked about here and more. It's really comprehensive. And this guy also does like a newsletter, email newsletter. Most of the things I've learned from Glitch Art have come from this page from Glitch It. So I'd recommend, if you're a beginner, to go into this. It can go into the nuts and bolts. I don't find it necessary to know that, you know, like we can see, like the WordPad effect, I didn't even touch on it. There is a lot. In no means do I know all of it either, you know. Yeah, I recommend going with that one. Is a really good start. And yeah, something simple like Datamosh Studio, or the GIFka one as well, where a lot of the thinking's taken out for you, that you can just play around and have some fun without having to know all the parts. Yeah.
Thank you.
Hey, no worries. Any other ones?
Yo, glitch.dad.
Nice background.
Yeah, I'm always in space. I was just wondering, like, is it possible for the Audacity technique to replace some parts with parts from another file, as long as you don't touch the header and don't change like the time? Is it possible to just cut and paste over a different part? Is that a thing?
I haven't tried it. I have tried with images by like reversing things and moving them around within the file itself. But
Right.
yeah, essentially it should. If you're just copying sections of another file and not the header, yeah, I don't see why not. It may or may not work. This is the beauty of glitch art. Yeah, good idea.
Yeah, so I figured it was trial and error thing, but just one thing I'm wondering is, like, does the header also sort of hold the information about the amount of data that it's in there? Like, if you change the length of the audio in Audacity, does that mess up the whole file?
I don't know. I don't think changing the length should. I mean, I haven't really. Let me think. like when I'm combining things, I've cut the tail off certain things. I don't think it affects it. Like, I'm not sure on the like the reasons, but I think it, as long as you don't touch it, it's kind of open game. I mean, that being said, probably because I don't understand all of the nuts and bolts about it, I just keep pushing a file, and if it works, it works. If it doesn't, then I keep moving on. It may, I don't think so from my experience. I haven't really run into that too often. But yeah, as I said, like and I gave the examples before that things often break or don't work, and it's just kind of part and parcel of it. I'd try as many things, like even what you suggested before by adding files from other files in together. It's a great one. It's kind of the big part of glitch art, is coming up with new ideas and trying to figure out what will work. You know?
Yeah, so I guess my question came a bit from trying to wrap my head around sort of the process and what's possible and what's not possible. But yeah, I think you're right. One of the beauties of sort of the glitch process is it's a lot of trial and error, and
yeah, and at the
sometimes
moment it's essentially
sometimes
all error.
yeah, sometimes you got to put in a lot of quantity before you get quality, and yeah.
Yeah, there is, and that's also why I definitely emphasize saving a copy of whatever file that you're working with. I was gonna, like, in terms of like theory, I think it's this one. Not necessarily that one. There's a guy called Stalio. I think he might be listed on here as Animals with Animals. Yeah. He does go into some of the background processes, like the nuts and bolts of a lot of things and how they work. If you're interested in that, I'd recommend checking out his stuff. I don't find it necessary. I just like try and break things and see if they look aesthetic.
Yeah, that's cool. By the way, that the mobile app tip for Rafa, that's a really good one. Like, I did this one tape loop ambient thing, and I wasn't even into video, or I haven't really done anything with video before, except for VJing for a friend with his material. But I downloaded some apps on my phone and just started messing with this recording that I made. And there are a lot of apps now that you can do really cool stuff with, like kaleidoscoping stuff and sort of bit crushing. And I had a pretty sort of fun video clip, not by any means professional, but I think that's a good tip. And Detroit Underground, on which Soup and Abraxas released their stuff, also recently brought out a video editing app. It's sort of like more editing than glitching, but they have some effects that really mess things up, and it's really cool to play with. So I would definitely also recommend that.
Yeah. It is really good, and I didn't mention too. There's one I didn't even get into. I don't know if you'd essentially call it glitch art, but there's a lot of machine learning stuff around now, especially like, say, sites like Artbreeder, where it can do a lot of the work for you. I mean, you can go the long process and put it all on your own computer, but there's stuff like that out there too, where you can get a process going like that, or you can use it to upscale. Like, say it could be helpful if you're using an app and then you download it to your computer and the resolution isn't that great. You can upscale it using machine learning. There's a ton of different places that do it online. Can be really interesting. I mean, you could purposely use that as a technique as well, by having something that's really low resolution and using machine learning, or vice versa, up or down. Like that, sometimes it can be interesting for artifacts.
Cool.
I think yeah, I'd agree on the app one too. Is a really good start. Anything that essentially, if you want to get into it, that does a lot of the hard work for you. It's not so intimidating as something like FFmpeg, and you know, it has a really simple group like user interface to use is a good starting point. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think one of the cool things is that you can just combine a bunch of different stuff, then export it and then refine it. It's and it's very playful, and it's just on your phone. Like it's
Yeah,
quick and
exactly.
easy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really handy. And I mean, on that, like I think I mentioned earlier that I'll take that as a source file, like something that I do on my phone, and then edit that further. I'll add on that too, which I meant to mention. A lot of the stuff where you do certain processes to kind of really can depend heavily on your source material. Like I do use a lot of stock footage, mostly from, I think it's Pexels and Pixabay, I think they're called. That can be really cool, but it is also like if you do your own data bending, etc., and use that as a source as well, you know, you can get some really interesting results. I mean, one of my original videos, which I could kind of be able to pop up, one of the first videos I ever did with any of this stuff, I just took the source video on my phone, and it was an old kind of crappy one. Like you can kind of see it, and I didn't really know a lot about this stuff as well. I knew how to use a video editor, and all of these kind of glitchy kind of things is essentially like it's just a hex editor, and this is the beauty of a video file. It's quite easy to corrupt, you know, and I just put that back into a video editor. That's the Weber effect as well. And I mean, that could be like an interesting way to start as well, you know, by just chucking files into a hex editor and seeing how it works. I suppose one of the things that can help you to familiarize yourself with stuff is experimenting with a ton of different file types, because each one has their kind of own thing in terms of images and in terms of video. But then also like if you want to do audio, then you're open to a ton of other things as well, you know, like it can work both ways, and you can bounce from audio back to visual, etc. I mean, I've sometimes done stuff in Photoshop where I've opened up a video as a raw file into Photoshop, and then edited that as an image, and then bounced that out as a raw file, and then it comes back as a video. It's a pretty kind of staticky looking thing, but it can work as well. And I think once you start playing around with all these things and noticing certain like aesthetics tied to each file type, like each image type or each video type or codec that it's using, you'll start to identify the processes that you like and develop a bit of familiarity around how you want to work, which is essentially, I think, how I prefer to fill my head with this stuff instead of trying to understand the whole lot. Is more from an artist perspective of just like learning my palette, you know, and like these are the colors I'm using, or these are the mediums, instead of having to know the whole theory behind everything. That I know, okay, well, a JPEG or a PNG file or a bitmap, they give this kind of effect when I run it through this, and that's how I'd recommend kind of starting. Is just really just experiment with heaps of file types and take note of how they go. Yeah.
Rad.
Anyway.
Thanks so much for sharing.
Yeah, no
Also,
worries.
guys, one last question, because it's funny, during this workshop, I already had ideas to remix my the video clip for that tape ambient song. But I was wondering if it's possible with the video editor that you're using, is possible to lay over or have another layer of video, but like select a small part that you're gonna put that video over. Like you have the source, you have to source the whole full screen, and then
Yeah.
select a tiny bit that you want to affect with another video that's smaller. Is
All
that
right.
possible?
You
Like,
see.
can you layer a smaller video over an original video?
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely.
Okay.
Like that. Let me see if I've got it on here. I will boot it up. And just quickly show you. Okay, I think I'm going to be able to get there. I don't have the exact version that I normally use. However, to give you an example, I think there is a few other video editors. I'm just used to using this one. And yeah, so this is a maximum you can do on it. You can't go any bigger than that, but that's still enough for me at the moment. So essentially, it kind of presents you with your video files, and you can insert as many tracks as you want to layer them up. So I suppose, in a sense, if I was to put some video files in here, I'm just dragging them in now. You know, they may or may not work. And for argument's sake, if they were, okay. Just ask me to change that there. I won't go too much into what I'm doing, but that's the preview of what it would look like if I just change this around. If I added this other one on top, for argument's sake, if for instance, if this was smaller, like, yeah, I could have this whatever I wanted. What I would do is, if I had a section like this that I hadn't affected, what I've talked about before with transitions, etc., is I would just select this one and this area here, and let me see there, it tells me, and then bounce that out, export it, save it, bring it back in here, and then dump that in back in again. In terms of putting it in together, what I mentioned before, there is a bunch of effects on here that I said, like they're kind of like Photoshop filters. Let me see, controls, that's it. I think a lot of other video editing software have this stuff, but you can combine similar to Photoshop filters. You kind of see, like, it can be really handy to do stuff.
Sick. That's awesome.
You find with this stuff too, that if you have a kind of plain background or a black background with the image kind of sparsely through it, it will blend well with certain specific ones. Although, I mean, I don't worry too much about that. Sometimes I just play around and you can get some cool stuff with it. And what I mentioned before is what I would do if I wanted a transition between the two of these is I'll just grab a second or two of this like that, export it, and then open it back up in something like Datamosh Studio, or do the FFmpeg one that I showed before, and then bounce it back into here and then throw that on top. And I'll keep this, like I'll keep this file. And what I tend to do when I always work is I keep all the files, sometimes present, unless it's slowing down the system and I have to bounce it down. And then I'll just chuck that file back into the spot here and keep that as the transition. And then I've got the option when I put that in to say, play around with this, like the opacity of it, how much it's coming through. You know, I could do the same thing here. How much I want that effect. You know, you might not want it that strong, you know, and you can have it a bit more subtle. It can be also really handy to get familiar with video editors if you're going to start getting into this kind of stuff too. Yeah.
Yeah, sick.
So
Thanks so much.
Definitely what you said before, I think you can do something quite similar. It could be sometimes a little bit laborious bouncing things in and out, but you definitely do it. I mean, there's kind of the aim of the process of a lot of this stuff can be very laborious, but yeah.
All right. Thanks so much for answering my questions. I really appreciate it. It's a really dope workshop.
Yeah, no, not a problem. Anybody else have any questions? I mean, okay, for the last few minutes, I could run through a couple of more effects that I didn't get to touch on, unless I've got any more questions. Yep. Yes. Right. Well, essentially the bloom effect is kind of just repeating P frames. I can give you a better example. Yeah, they're like keyframes essentially. Let me think. I do have a better example here if I can find the link for you. There's broken GIF. I think it's this one. You can see up here. I'm pretty sure that this is the one. Okay, this one here through the resources will talk more about prepping, like I didn't do before. I was a bit lazy, but I use FFmpeg. Okay, we're talking about P frames here. So here we're talking about, I'm going to find the one that talks about. Okay, here we go. So this is what I talked about here, where you bring up the decoder options so you can see the motion vectors, and it has these arrows. So essentially down here, so you can see the frame type and the P frames. You always want to select those when you're doing the bloom effect. And they should give you an example, hopefully they give you an example here. There you go. So yeah. Whereas this is kind of like it drags the frame in the motion of where the arrows are, which, you know, like when you're looking at the file itself, when it's got these arrows up there, obviously the ones that look like they've got a lot more movement will really like be accentuated. If I can, I might have a video example that's a bit more obvious. But it is essentially like it is a different process altogether than Datamoshing. Let's see if I do have another one. I can give you an example. I think this is one here. Let's see that on the screen. It kind of gives you a motion. And that's just from a video file repeating the P frames. Yeah, it's a cool aesthetic. Yeah. That yeah, no worries. Yeah, it is a slightly different process. I mean, not sure the nuts and bolts on that one, apart from just repeating P frames. What I will say though, it's like I can do processes on these for a long time, and the Vitamux can crash quite often. It could be really frustrating if you spent ages doing something and you didn't save it, and it crashes and you got to do it all over again. So I do save after I've done a few, because it's notorious for, like, if you're repeating P frames, it could be like 10 or more, and you just keep pasting and then it just crashes and then you've lost all of that time. So I try to save things over and over and over just to account for that. Yeah, in terms of Datamoshing, I just use the studio. The Datamosh studio doesn't do the bloom effect. That, as far as I know, I don't think anybody else has any software or anything that does that. So yeah, as far as I know, I'm just doing that by hand when I do that. I do use it a fair bit for images because to me, I would just really like the aesthetic of the bloom effect as an image. So I screen grab a lot of stuff, you know, that of a bloom effect, and I might not even save the video file properly. Like, I think, yeah, that's a bloom effect, you know, and it probably got a ton of other ones as well in here too. There's another bloom effect. Like, it can be really, oh, and this is also when we're talking about different processes. So that's a bloom effect with the web on a WebM file with pixel sorting. It can be a really cool effect. Yeah, no worries. Any other questions? Kind of running up to the end. I can't think of anything else that I haven't covered. This is my FFmpeg. Just run through this quickly then while I'm here. So yeah, this is something that I do plan on like compiling, so it's a little bit easier to see. If anyone that's interested in using FFmpeg, I really encourage it because there's so much you can do with it. I've made it here so that as you can see, input and output, that you can just come in here and edit your file type, name, and then copy and paste it straight into the console. It makes it a lot easier. And in terms of that, a lot of your work will be done in this part of this. This will be your install folder. Will be in here. This is where it'll render everything. So that being said, I'd like to have this all together. So I've saved my files, like this text file. I don't have it for here, but I save it in there so it's easy accessible. I have this open while I'm doing it, and then you can just copy and paste all of this stuff in it. You know, what I've got so far is a bunch of different effects. The one that I talked about before with the FFglitch. There's this one here, Pruitt effect. I'm not entirely sure that thing on that. That's this. It kind of traces the outline. It's got in green, but you know, I could change that color in post, or because it's green, I could combine that in a video editor like a green screen. It could be kind of handy. There's heaps of other ones here that what I'd also recommend getting familiar with too, and having a look at the different codes on what to convert things, like even just simple processes of like changing frame rates or resolutions, etc. And file types can be really handy. I do like to do certain things like this as well. This shuffles frames, video frames around this one. You can get a little bit of a jittery kind of effect. Can be like really good, particularly if you're combining it with some audio that is fast, or you know, kind of glitchy, that you can mimic that through the images by just swapping frames around. It kind of gets a really jittery effect. Don't know if I've done that one as an example. No. Let me see what else I could give you. I didn't touch on this one, which I've used a few times before. It's called Byte, and it's essentially hex editing. It's just a nice, quick, easy way, and you can do large files quickly. Like it's another console thing, but you can process files quite quickly. It does require Node.js, I think it is, Node, to be installed. That this should also be up on the resources page, I think, from memory. If not, let me know. I can find that. This can be kind of cool to make different effects with, just because it takes a lot of the time out of it. I think, I don't know if I did one with this. No, I didn't. It essentially does the same technique as hex editing. If there's anything else I can show you guys, or how are we going?
Just to let you know that I'm not sure if Zoom let us stay more than the registered time, so
Okay.
we might need to.
Yeah, no problem. If there's no more questions, then I'm happy to leave it at that.
Any more questions?
Yeah.
Nope.
Cheers. Thank you.
Yeah, it was really cool for me as well. I'm really excited. I really want to try some stuff I haven't tried before. But yeah,
awesome. Awesome. Oh, great. Well, thank you.
Thank you for showing us all this amazing stuff.
No problem. My pleasure. And I hope you enjoy playing around with some of this stuff.
Yeah, we'll do. I'll send you my experiments.
Yeah, do. And any of you guys that are on our Discord, yeah, hit me up there too. Hit me up through my website or whatever if you have any questions about any of this stuff, or you're stuck on certain things or etc. I'm happy to help there too.
Okay then. Well, good morning for you. It was gonna be good night here.
Yep. Good evening for most of you guys.
Okay then. Bye.
Okay. See you later. Thank you.
See you. Bye.